Welcome to PD on the Go, the podcast that delivers bite-sized learning on communication, collaboration, and facilitation for busy teacher leaders. Tune in while you're in the car, on your lunch break, or making copies, and get ready to level up your leadership skills. My name is Mary Beth Anderson, and I work in the Office of Professional Learning in Fairfax County Public Schools, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Hallie Case.
Hello.
So today we are building on our episode from last week. And last week we talked about some high leverage protocols that collaborative learning teams could use to answer all four of the critical questions.
Yep.
And this week we want to talk about another best practice for collaborative learning teams to engage in, which is analyzing student work. And I think this is one that teams don't often engage in because it's a little bit tricky in figuring out a structure to guide that work and how do we do that in an impactful way that supports our instructional practices in the classroom. So we have one protocol from our CLT protocol library called the strategy ladder. So Hallie, what is a strategy ladder for our listeners who are new to this?
Yeah. Okay, so strategy ladder in a CLT is everyone brings student samples of work to the team meeting. And so in elementary school, this might look like you're bringing your class set of something. In secondary, maybe you would choose one class period to bring. You've all agreed on whatever that was. It's likely a formative assessment of some kind, something where there's like students have produced work where you can see what their thought process would have been. So you're going to first start independently, and you're going to look through your student work and you're going to sort it into 4 categories. So the first would be they're emerging in the skill, then developing, then you would be proficient, and proficient is sort of where we would say is students are meeting the rigor of the standard. So whatever task matches that standard, you would put them in that proficient, and then advanced would be they're showing that they can go beyond that. So you sort them yourself, and then you partner up with someone, and you start norming together. Were your placements similar? What are the characteristics that you're seeing at each of those levels? And start kind of thinking about any shifts that you might need to make. And then you share out as a whole group the characteristics. So we're saying if we look at the level 1 work samples, they're exhibiting this sort of characteristic. Level 2 characteristics, level 3. And then where the really helpful planning component of the conversation comes in is when teams get to talk about, so if we have students at level 2 and we know the characteristics now of a level 3, what do we need to do to move them from a 2 to a 3? And then what do we need to do to move them from a 3 to a 4? And so it's a great strategy for looking at student work, really considering the rigor of thinking that's involved and figuring out strategies together to move through those levels of proficiency.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about all the teachers around the table being able to share ideas about what do you do for the level 1s to move them to level 2s or level 2. And if I'm a new teacher, it would be so helpful to know exactly how to support kids in moving them forward with what they're producing. Because I may know how to get one group, but I might not have the background knowledge or the toolbox of like how to support kids when they're really emerging in their skills or when they're really on that advanced end. Because we're also thinking about what can we do for those advanced students to move them forward as well.
Right. When we were kind of talking about this protocol, as a teacher, I hadn't been introduced to strategy ladders yet. And I remember thinking back on it now, I wish that I had known about this because I think sometimes I would know okay, I need to pull certain students into a small group because I know kind of where they were missing certain content and or what they weren't quite proficient at the standard, but I wouldn't always know what to do about I knew I had to bring them to me,
right? But
then once they were there, there was sort of a gap in my understanding, and I think that the strategy ladder fills in that. And where it works really well in collaboration is that it's not just one person's ideas. You get the collective, and that's when we know collaboration is really worth it, is when you need everybody's thinking in order to help support students.
Yeah, and I've even seen, once we determined as a team, like what were going to be the instructional strategies or the teaching points to move one group to another group, then we could divide and conquer a little bit. Like we spent most of our CLT just determining what those teaching points and instructional moves were, but then people went off in pairs, and I'll create the lesson for this small group. You'll create the lesson for this small group. And then we were able to share those and tweak them based on the students in front of us. So it was a nice way to use our CLT time for all that really strategic thinking, and being able to pool all of our ideas and our tools into one toolbox, and then be able to walk away and make the lesson plan, small group lesson plans, or the copies, or this that some of us really rely on, or maybe we're using our CLT for before, but this is a way to kind of like bridge that together.
It makes me think too that, if this sounds new to you as a teacher leader, and maybe your team's never engaged in a protocol like this before, or you're just unaccustomed to bringing student work to team meetings, like what you just described could be a good reason to give. Like, so here's the protocol we're going to engage in today, and here's what we'll get out of it. And you might need to sell it, know, because it can be a little bit vulnerable and uncomfortable to lay out student work, and so it also can be compelling to people to understand the reason why.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, if you're really new to this work, one little entry point that I saw a team do years ago is for their like community builder or their grounding. One person from each, like one person on the team would take turns bringing one piece of student work, and they would show it on like the overhead projector. Or the you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the screen. They'd project it.
Yes, project it. And everyone would look at it about what did they notice about the students thinking, what were some things they were wondering about, what could be some next steps for this student, and then they would share it. So it was like just a way, they called it Spotlight on Student Work, and it was different work throughout, this was in an elementary setting, so it was different subjects, but it was a way to connect, oh, I have a student like that. Oh, I could try those next steps. And it was a way that they eased into bringing student work before they tried something like a strategy ladder. So that could be a way to get teams started in doing this work. Yeah. So in thinking of what can we offer our listeners, we will upload this protocol of the strategy ladder for them to try on our teacher leadership site. And you can find all of our resources for our episodes and this resource on our Instagram page at FCPS_PD. If you are in FCPS, you can also search us on our Atlas site and be able to access all of these resources as well. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you tune in next week for more PD on the Go.